So Larry, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Can you tell us something about what inspired you to become a filmmaker? What were your influences in growing up?
Well, I always liked movies. I liked scary movies when I was little, and but I always focused on the actors. So it was and the monsters in most cases. But I liked the old Universal films, and then I saw a movie called The Man of a Thousand Faces with James Cagney, and then I sort of veered off into a love of Cagney and the Warner Brothers films. And then as I got older, I liked, of course, the movies of the 70s, which were actually in theaters in my youth. But I transitioned from being an actor, and then I started directing plays in high school, and I just realized that there was even more ways to tell a story, and I've ended up getting a Super 8 camera, and I really loved the fact that the camera, the way you reveal the story is through the camera. So that's when I became really interested in film, to be a filmmaker. In those days, it wasn't so obvious how movies were made, and it was so much more mysterious medium, and it was great fun to sort of slowly discover it on my own, how to make movies.
Excellent. And how long did you spend doing that? When did you first pick up a camera?
1979, I made a series of shorts in Super 8, and you'd have to splice them on a tiny bit of tape, and so whatever 79 was, I'm not sure how old I was, I guess 13 or something. Is that true? 16. 16. Although I'd made an animation with little G.I. Joe dolls when I was younger, and I'd made Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was my first live action feature film, and that was when I was 12. But then, as I say, I was primarily an actor until I actually got a Super 8 camera, and then got into making silent films, and I'd have a boogie box where you'd play the sound with it, and just evolved from there.
Excellent. And can you tell us how you actually got your first break in filmmaking, your first producing or directing role, how that came about, how it actually got into the industry?
Well, I mean, it's unclear if I'm even in the industry, even as we speak. I mean, I produced films, a movie called Experienced Movers, Hollow Venus. I mean, I went to a school in New York that focused, a college, NYU, that focused on film. And what I found there is that there was, that's when I discovered video, and I realized you can make feature films in video. I'd made all of these Super 8s by then and enjoyed the medium, but to have sync sound for very little money was extremely exciting. And I had a television show on what we have is something called cable access, where you'd hand a tape over every Tuesday and it would play on TV, which was thrilling. This was before the internet, so that was a way to get to the public. So that's what I mean, whether or not I'm in the industry. I was basically slowly just starting to make movies. And then I made an epic film in video. And I remember I put a cover on it, and I took it to the video store, and they would rent it. So that was also seemed absolutely thrilling. And it just went on like that. So I made independent films and found financing, and eventually made bigger movies and went to festivals, and eventually sold No Telling and Habit. Those are my first big features. But before that was a legacy of strange self-distribution, self-promotion, I worked with performance artists for many years, and we would poster the streets of New York and show at these events, and so it was almost this whole experience in the East Village of New York. Steve Buscemi was doing stand-up routines with his partner and Mark Boone Jr., and Jim Jarmusch was just starting to make movies, and you'd go to the theater and see a Spike Lee film, and you'd think, that's so close to what I'm trying to do. So that was really, and it was almost the beginning of indie cinema. There was 1990, I guess, was the first Sundance Film Festival, which was then called the U.S. Film Festival. And so, that's the point. It was not, now you think of getting into the business. You think of, it's a very deliberate process because it's available to you, and it's obviously what the new generation should be doing. But in those days, Hollywood was making movies, and there was the sense of independence, but it was really starting when I was young. Obviously, there have always been independent filmmakers like George Romero, but it was all kept at a distance, the filmmaking world, and you had to sort of break in by your own intuitions.
Talking about going from Super 8 to video, um, how do you? What is your favourite format? Are you of the opinion that film is more important, or video is more important, or they're equally important, and you would just do whatever it is by whatever means necessary to make that film? What's your favourite kind of?
Whatever means necessary. I think the format affects the feeling you have, and so it's worth fighting for a format. But I've never believed in, and especially when video was new, I was a huge advocate. I always said, don't let the format be the reason you're not making a movie. You know, tell your story, get your group of friends together, go out and make it. I don't want to hear about how you couldn't raise $500,000 to make an independent film just because you think you need to have a relationship with a lab. And, so it was ironic because I loved video and the spontaneity and the access that I had. Then in 1990, when I finally got some money together to make a feature, I wanted to film in celluloid. And in the 90s, people started saying, what about making movies in video? And I was like, yeah, but that's what I was doing in the 80s. I've waited my whole life to make movies in film. So I've been lucky enough, I've made 4 features in celluloid. And but now, you see, I've been producing films, and we often shoot on the Red. And now, of course, everyone's talking about the Alexa. The Red is old school. But the point is I love the opportunities that affords, and in a way, I'm sort of excited to work in the new digital medium. We made a movie on the 5D, which I'm very fond of, and it was the story that really stands out. And each medium gives you a feeling and a look, and you should exploit that and take that into consideration when you're creating the film.
Talking about earlier on, we spoke about whether you were actually in the industry or not. You've kind of created your own little industry, and you're
Right.
bringing all this new talent to our screens. With those guys that are directing while you produce, how do you feel about the collaborations? You are a collaborator. To me, I feel you're a collaborator. How do you influence their work, and how do they influence your work, and how does it all work together as a collaboration?
Well, it came out. First of all, I mentioned that I worked with performance artists, and in that regard, I had bought 3/4 inch equipment for video. Um, and, people would come to me. I love to edit. It's really my sort of favorite part of filmmaking. And so performance artists would come, and we'd edit things. We'd sort of create their reels, and then eventually I would be helping them do their shows, and so it was always a collaboration. And in some sense, I was always a producer because I'd offer them, they'd start by paying me, but eventually we'd have so much fun that we'd start just saying, let's put on a show. And so a lot of those things I became very instrumental in the creation of work, and that sort of logically moved into a little film I made called Hollow Venus, which we shot on 16. That was a performance artist, and I worked with her, and we made a narrative out of her work. So you see, it sort of developed like that. More recently, of course, it's all just been sort of made official. And Ty West was a guy that I met. He was an intern for me, and by the time, within 3 weeks, he was having me make dubs for him. He was a very ambitious and smart kid, and I loved his short films. I liked the vibe. And I said, come back if you ever have a feature, and we'll see what we can do, put it together. So he did, and it was just a matter of like, well, what do you need? You need a cast? Let's do casting from my office. And Jim McKenney is also a very smart filmmaker, and he already had a community of people. So it was a matter of me saying, let's do it. And I said, who do you want in it? And he said, well, I always wrote it for Angus Scrimm. And I said, well, let's find Angus. Let's go for what you wanted. And so it's a collaboration in the sense that I'm a cheerleader, I'm an enabler, and I have equipment and a mode of doing things, and I meet like-minded people, and it's expanded from there. Like Graham Resnick is a director that we work with, and he does all of Ty's sound, and so he sort of came into the fold, and then he offered me a script, and I said, maybe that's a little peculiar. And then we tried another one, and that was the one. So it's very organic. People always say, how do you get to make a glass eye film? And often it's someone who's an intern, or, there's sort of a process. And I believe that one day you carry the spear, and one day you're the lead in the play, like a Chekhov thing. And I edit for other people, and then we'll do, Graham will do sound, and then he's trying to direct. So it's a community of people, and that's the spirit. It's just grown into whatever it is.
Talking about collaborations, you directed the Fear Itself episode Skin and Bones, which is spin-off or third season of Masters of Horror.
Right.
How did you get involved in that, and how did you become involved in all of the collaborators on that show?
Well, I think what happened is Guillermo del Toro took an interest in me and wanted me to direct The Orphanage, which is a remake of the Spanish film by the same name. And through that, I got an agent or manager, and I think they put me in touch with Mick Garris. I think Ron Perlman had spoken highly of me because we made the film last winter together. And in any case, I don't know. It's the same thing I'm describing. Everything sort of happens by happenstance. But I got into the mind of Garris, and he called me, and I just started talking. I pitched actually several different things, and they were like, "We're not sure about that." I think what had happened is they already had scripts written, so why get new scripts? And they, whatever their process was, they felt they'd paid for these. So the irony is, he said, "Listen, it wasn't Mick anymore. It was his junior producer who really did the show." And he said, "Listen, it's a Wendigo story. Do you mind doing that?" And I was like, "Well, that seems appropriate enough." So Andrew Dean was the one who sort of followed through, and I went up to Canada, and it's a great setup, especially for an indie filmmaker, because you walk in and you have 7 days to make a movie, an hour-long film, and I just had a blast because it was all sort of there. It was like a big workshop, and they come with 7 axes and say, "Which one do you want?" And, well, maybe that one, if the handle was green. And it's just was very satisfying to have a whole team behind you, and the producers were very responsive to my concerns, and I tweaked the script, so I really had a good time. And I woke up one night and I said, "I want Doug Jones to do the character." I have no idea. I mean, obviously it was Guillermo's influence and Guillermo's movies where I was aware of Doug, but it was just, I think, one of the greatest flash inspirations I've ever had. So I went in and they said, "Who the fuck is Doug Jones?" And I'm like, "You don't understand. We don't need special effects anymore. He's the most, intriguing physical actor, and this is what we have to do." And it was incredible that he was available and so pleasant on the phone, and I pitched the whole thing to him, and so it ended up being a really great experience.
Excellent. And with this new group of people that you inspire, there seems to be a lot of slow burn films
Mm-hmm.
in your list of film productions and direction and acting, indeed.
Yeah.
So nowadays, there's more and more slow burn films appearing, more
Mm-hmm.
films that are really truly independent and have a heart and have something to say. How do you feel about these slow burning films in the current climate of these multi-million blockbusters? You've got two kind of paths. You've got the path of, you can be a Michael Bay and make Transformers, or you can be like yourself and make a film that actually means something but isn't necessarily something that mainstream audiences will like. How do you feel about that conflict?
Well, it's actually heartbreaking, because where it really becomes significant is when you're pitching a story and you say, "It'll start this way, you'll get to know these characters," and then something will go wrong in the case of making a horror film. And they say, "Well, that's fine. We love what you do, but surely we can have a big thing happen in the beginning." And you're like, "Well, that's a choice, but I'm pitching you something else. Let's try this other idea." And the fact is that my complaint about the blockbusters in general is that they really are very redundant. It's endlessly the same pacing and formulaic unfolding of information, so that it's the old cliche. You walk out and you literally can't remember what you've just seen, because it reminds you of so many others, and the dazzling effects and so on are fun to stare at, but you aren't affected. And I really feel that in the work of Ty West or the work of Jim Mickle, these stories have heart, and they have pacing that is unnerving, because it's not the rhythms that you expect. I think that's what film really is how you reveal information. It's what Hitchcock said, which I love, and that's why Hitchcock's camera work is celebrated, because he always says you don't show the wide shot first like you do if you're doing a sitcom. You show the building where the people live, and then you go in and you tell your little half-hour tale. But the fact is that when you show a wide shot is a huge choice. You know, you may be having dinner and the thing you're really experiencing is the food, and so you start with a close-up of the food, and then only when you realize, you know, oh my God, this person is concentrating on their little meal, and then you show the wide shot halfway through and you go, they're in a huge crowd, and then you've revealed that this person is hungry or obsessed with their thing or concentrate. You see what I mean? You've revealed those, you've told a story a certain way. And I just find that that's rare. So that's what I'm looking for, filmmakers who do that. And it is a struggle with executives, who are the guys with the money, who are creating the taste. I mean, you look at 70s movies, a lot of the kids today, they can barely focus on them because they're not moving quickly enough. But having said that, I would argue that most kids eventually can see the power of these kind of movies. And dude, if that's lost, then we've just lost the whole game. Because I mean, this is also a fight for civilization. You know, I always bring everything to the bigger picture, but I do believe that's the issue. I mean, if you dumb everyone down, then you can change look at our politics in America. People are so distracted that they believe untruths because they're just whatever they're fed. Whatever someone says, the loudest person in the room is the one who carries the conversation and the meaning. So a slow burn film is the savior of humanity.
Excellent. Larry Fessenden, thanks for joining us
Sure,
today.
man.
Excellent.
Thanks.